Well, welcome everyone. Why, thank you. We're going to go ahead and get started. And just a little housekeeping before we proceed. I just want to welcome everyone. This is our Village Manager Candidates Town Hall, and we thank you for coming out. This is being streamed live on Channel 5, and we're also on YouTube. So your questions will be heard around the village. Few things before we get started. All of you probably know the restrooms are straight down the stairs here. I feel like an airline attendant. The exit side, the exit doors on either side. This is the only one that has the ramp on it, though. Please, if you would be so kind, turn your cell phones off. Unless you're actually, unless you're expecting something very important that you need to be alerted to, then please just turn it on vibrate. But the reason why I ask you to turn them off is because if we could just give 40 minutes of our attention to these 4 candidates, that would be awesome time spent. Because if your cell phone buzzes, the first thing you do is what? You look at it, and we're off again. So if you can turn those down, we appreciate it. Each candidate will speak for 3 minutes, and they'll share with you some background, information, as well as insights to why they are interested in serving in this capacity. As you came in, you were given 4 cards to go along with our 4 different candidates this evening. If you have a question, we ask for whatever candidate, we ask you to write your question on the card. If you have the same question for each candidate, please write it on all 4 cards because we'll be reading from different spaces in the room this evening. Hi, Matthew. The other few things is please print. We have a little hard time sometimes, and we come up with the wrong word, and the person in the audience says, I didn't say that. So if you could please print your questions, that would help tremendously. Also, if you hear your question being asked by someone else, maybe in another way, we ask that you don't ask the same question, even though we know you can ask it better. And let's see, the candidates have 25 minutes, so they can decide how they're going to field the questions about their length of answers or how they're going to go about that. So we left that up to them. Let's see here. I have some notes here from Marianne. If you have questions midway through and you write it on your card, just hold your card up. And one of our wonderful volunteers will come get the card from you and we'll read it. If we don't see you, just kind of wave your card. We will get to it. We will get to everybody. At the end of the session, after you've heard some wonderful things and asked some wonderful questions, if you would like to speak to the candidates on a one-on-one basis, they will be upstairs in the A and B room, so you can actually pull them to the sides and talk to them a little bit more. In addition, at the Yellow Springs Senior Center tomorrow morning, the candidates will be available there for one-on-one or small group conversation as well. We do have a feedback form. So we ask that you please fill out the feedback form, and you can leave them right up here at the on the stage, and we will gather them up. If you are watching on Channel 5, or if you're downloading us or watching us on YouTube, and you'd like a feedback form, you can pick them up at local businesses. Also, if you can't get out, we ask that you just go ahead and email us and we will bring one of these feedback forms to your home. And you can email at, and I'm going to just spell it out, so bear with me here, J. Kintner, K-I-N-T-E-R, K-I-N-T-N-E-R, we were missing a letter here, at vil.yellowsprings.oh.us. One more time, J-K-I-N-T-N-E-R at vil.yellowsprings with the S .oh.us. So, thank you. That's very good, Brian. They want the forms by Friday, April the 12th by 5 p.m. And that's the way so they can tally everything and they don't have things coming on in the last minute. So if you would be so kind, we certainly do appreciate it. So let's go ahead and any questions about procedure? Oh, we're ready to rock and we're ready to roll. Let's do it. We're going to start first with our first candidate, and in any order of preference. We're going to start with Pete Bales. And if he can come forward, and Pete, welcome. We appreciate you, and the floor is yours.
All right. Well, good evening. My name is Pete Bales, and I'd like to really start off the evening by thanking you, the community, for the last couple of days here in the village. I've had just a fantastic time getting to know a lot of you better than before and meeting a lot of you for the first time. I got to tour a lot of fantastic places. The DMS location this afternoon, I had never been there before, and so it was a real pleasure to see such an amazing operation. And then, of course, Antioch College, what a jewel for the community. Mills Lawn Elementary School, we got to learn about their PBL program that is just fantastic, and the children there were so enthusiastic, really, to show us everything they were doing. And then yesterday, there was a nonprofit network meeting that all of the candidates attended, and really it was refreshing for me to see all of the good work from like so many organizations in town that really benefit the village. So I want to thank you for that experience, and I look forward to that. First, I am a lifelong resident of Greene County, and I'm currently the Assistant City Manager in Fairborn. I am married to my wife, Amanda. We've been married for about 15 years this year. And I have two kids. My son, Jack, he's 12, going on 20, right? And I have a daughter, Kara, who's 9, and she's still a sweetheart. All right, but I think that's probably going to change. Anyway, here's why I believe I'm the best candidate for this job. I have had the pleasure to serve an array of passionate citizens throughout my 23-year career in a variety of different capacities. I have really had the pleasure to work from the bottom of an organization all the way to the top where I am today. And every position I've held has given me a much deeper understanding of government operations and made me more and more passionate about serving communities. I am a hands-on worker, and I always have been, and I will be in the village. I do not sit behind my desk, close my door. I love to be active and involved with all aspects of not only the government, but also activities happening throughout the village. I'm 47 years old, and with the exception of college, I have spent my career working for communities right around the what that means to you is I have developed passionate, meaningful relationships with citizens, elected officials, nonprofit organizations, environmental organizations, all which I believe will be a big benefit as the village manager. Coming from a much larger city in Fairborn, where we have 33,000 residents and a much larger government, will be a benefit because I have had experience in a variety of different capacities, all which really relate to the village very well. Parks and Recreation is my background. It's my passion. It's my education. I've spent years doing green space preservation, trail development, and parkland development. I became the Public Works Director, where I have supervised and overseen water and wastewater infrastructure improvements, which I know that the village has taken on recently. And then, of course, street improvements and all of the funding that goes along with creating complete street projects, something that is really near and dear to my heart. And then for the last several years as Assistant City Manager, have been doing a variety of economic development projects for the city. And that has been another aspect that's really kind of rounded out my governmental operations understanding. I've put together a budget for Fairborn. It's a $30 million operational budget annually, and I am in charge of our capital improvement program, which is about a $50 million program annually. It hasn't always been easy. There's been economic downturn, budget crisis, and I've had to make difficult decisions. That's something that obviously is challenging and hard to do, but I can do it. And something that I'm sure we'll be faced with here in the village at some point in time. But really, I'm honored to have worked in the city of Fairborn for as long as I have, because 15 or 20 years ago, I'm sure you can know, Fairborn was a much different city than it is today. And so I'm very proud of the work that I've done, and I have really not done it alone. In fact, none of it would have happened if it weren't for a dedicated team of citizens, dedicated team of employees, and council members that have been very supportive. And so I'm proud of where I've come from, and I look forward to a bright future here. And with that, I'd be happy to start answering questions.
We have one question to start with. How have you increased business opportunities in your most recent employment?
Great question. So for the last several years, my main focus has been economic development in our downtown business district. We really wanted to rethink, reimagine what people thought of Fairborn. So we worked on image and trying to reach out to a creative class of individuals and millennials to try and attract more business downtown. So what we've done, we've done a multi-pronged approach. We've worked hard on removing blight from the community. We've spent some funding on infrastructure and tearing down some old dilapidated structures. And the city has now owns green space that we have been able to offer as economic development incentives for new business opportunities in our downtown. We've also done a commercial kitchen incubator program in our downtown, where we bring home-based businesses that are kind of growing a little bit too big for their home, and we give them an affordable place to work in downtown in hopes that they can continue to grow their business and then move out into the community. And then I would finally say there's been a few other impactful projects, but finally I've also worked on a fiber optic broadband project that brought fiber optic to the downtown and free public Wi-Fi, all in an effort to, again, generate traffic, foot traffic in the downtown. And Some of those things are transferable to the village. Some are not, but I think it's important that I have all of this knowledge and certainly open to listening to the community and developing a program of activities that could be applicable here.
It is important that we hire a village manager with strong skills in communication, management, grant writing, and finance, to mention a few. Please share your assessment of your strengths in these areas. Which are you strongest in and which are you weaker?
Okay. My management style revolves around basically three tenets: communication, accessibility, and teamwork. And so as far as communication goes, I am very skilled at listening to the needs of the community and kind of boiling that down to understand the values that are important here. And they are values that are different in every community. So Yellow Springs is no different. And being able then to communicate those needs to city council and village team staff members in a way that I think that they will understand the overall mission of the government and be able to come up with innovative and unique programs for the community. As far as government operations, I've been blessed to be given the ability throughout my career to kind of work my way through every single facet of the government. I've been interim city manager in Fairborn for about 6 months of my career, and during that time I supervised every department: police, fire, finance, public works, community and economic development, etc. So I feel like I'm very well versed in all of the departments that you listed there. Can you list them again? I'll try and find one that I'm maybe not as versed in.
It was communication, management, grant writing, and finance.
I feel confident in all of those areas. I've developed grants for park improvement projects, for street improvement projects, ranging from as small as a few $1,000s to actually a few $1 million for street projects. So writing grants is something that I'm familiar with. I've got contacts throughout the region and Miami Valley Regional Planning Commission for street infrastructure projects. So I feel very confident in all of those areas.
Well, what do you see as the 5 most critical problems to solve for the village of Yellow Springs?
Well, I'll name a few. I'm not certain I can count all the way to 5, but I think that we can divide issues into 2 different sections. We can divide issues into government operations, meaning public work issues, infrastructure problems, parkland development, programmatic issues. And then I think we can take the other side of the coin, being the social aspect of how the government interacts socially with the community and understands the needs as it relates to social equity issues and the policing issues that we've heard about recently. So I think that infrastructure is always a big deal when you're dealing with government operations. We have to provide safe drinking water and sewer treatment, and when you flush your toilet, that has to get to the treatment plant. And I know that there's aging infrastructure here, and so I think budget related to doing some of those projects will be an issue that will have to be addressed in the upcoming years. And I don't know a time frame because I'm not as well versed on exactly what the budget entails today. And then I just think that getting the rest of the staff, including the police department, out into the community, involved into the community, and completely understand the values and how their interactions with the community relate to the perception, how they're perceived. So that's only two maybe, but I think that those are two big ones as it relates to the government.
As a Fairborn resident, are there perceived incorrect manager?
From my perspective, I know exactly what I'm getting into. Everybody has a different perspective. So I'm not going to classify Fairborn and how the entire community thinks about Yellow Springs. I know how I view Yellow Springs. There's a reason why I applied for the job, because I think it's a good fit for me, my values, and I think I bring a lot to the table that can be a benefit to the village. So I'm not going to answer your question.
Okay, got another one. What particular aspects of Yellow Springs would you leverage to enhance the business community?
Oh, well, it goes hand in hand with perception. And I mean, Yellow Springs is the most unique community in certainly all of Greene County and probably the entire region of the state. I think we need to embrace it. We need to, run it up the flagpole and beat our chests about how amazing and unique the community is. It is a destination spot, whether some villagers like it or not. I mean, really, and I heard it today. I heard some of that with some conversations today. So from my perspective, from an economic, and the question was about economic development, is that I think that we need to run with it, we need to embrace it and enjoy it, and make the best of it, because people come here from all over the state for exactly what Yellow Springs is. And those values and the retail opportunities and the art community, it's just a special place.
We have some ongoing issues with our police force. How would you handle contentious problems?
So I may take a different tact because policing today is, and the issues related to policing today is not isolated to Yellow Springs. So this is a nationwide issue and perception. I believe that first and foremost, the police are here to protect our lives, our property, and serve the community. I think that it's important to understand the values of the community, and that goes beyond the police force. I think that goes to our entire organization and everything that we do as a government operation. So, I think that we need to engage in an active conversation with the community, including the police force. But I believe really that goes to we have interactions with public works workers and parks workers and our zoning administrator, and all of the people who work for the city need to understand the values of the community, what's important to the community, and then implement programs that reflect those needs and desires, including the police. Certainly there are sensitive issues and issues that have come up with the police force that need to be dealt with on an individual basis, and we certainly will do that. But my take on it is that it's not just limited to the police. It should be a citywide issue and program moving forward.
You said you have a hands-on style and that you get your hands dirty. Please give at least one specific, concrete example of that.
Well, my background is Parks and Recreation. It's the fun department of every city, right? If you think about dealing with city government, nobody really likes to go pay a parking ticket or pay a speeding ticket or even file a zoning application. There's nothing fun about it. But Parks and Recreation is at the core of who I am, and with that means that I have been involved in recreation events, special events, community projects and cleanups and walks in the park and so forth. I guess what I'm saying is in Fairborn, I am kind of the face of the community, or have been the face of the community, and love the interaction with the community. And so, we have festivals. We just put on a huge St. Patrick's Day event, and we do the Miami Valley's largest 4th of July parade. All of those things are things that I embrace and love being involved in the planning and implementation phases of those. Of course, we have council meetings and public meetings on all sorts of community issues, and those give me the opportunity to really listen to the community, understand perspectives, so that I can formulate my best opinions and recommendations for our city council. So I just enjoy being active, and I always have been, and I always plan to be.
Have you been at the bargaining table, actively involved with negotiating an agreement?
Have I been? Okay, yeah. Several times, I mean, many times. In Fairborn, we have the pleasure to have 5 bargaining units in the police, 3 in the police department, 1 in the fire department, 1 in our public service department. And so I have been involved in negotiations for all 5 of those throughout my career. And, it's absolutely a give and take type of an atmosphere. One that I am proud to say I've worked with the staff, put together a plan so that we could unify all of our agreements so that it's fair and equitable to all of our employees. And we have 250 employees in Fairborn. It's a bit different, but it's theory is still the same. What's fair for one is fair for all. And a lot of times when you're dealing with unions, they want what they can get for their bargaining unit, but that's not the way I approached it. And so we were very successful the last time around through collective bargaining, and those agreements were all signed, and we've got a much more even playing field. Well, that's a lot of internal things. I've also been involved in agreements with business owners and from an economic development perspective, property owners and land development agreements. So I've got a broad base of experience negotiating. Make it a good one.
What makes you want to serve in Yellow Springs now versus staying in Fairborn?
Well, first of all, and I touched on it a little bit earlier, I'm a parks guy, and there's no better community in the county than Yellow Springs if you enjoy the outdoors and you enjoy recreation and you enjoy a vibrant community. Fairborn has some of that, and I'm proud to have built what I have in Fairborn. I have no issues with working in Fairborn and dedicating my career. 17 years in one community is a long time. So I do not take changing jobs, changing careers lightly. I mean, this was something, a decision to even apply for the job that my wife and I really talked about and said, you know, this is a great opportunity. There's no place else like Yellow Springs. Let's make it happen. Let's go for it. It's a great place, and that's the reason. So thank you all. Enjoy the other 3 candidates. You've got a hard choice. They're all great, and I've appreciated my time here.
Now, I know how this goes. Some of you are saying, my question did not get answered. Well, don't worry, because all the candidates are going to get the questions, and when you have a moment to talk to them, you can ask them about the question that, your particular question that did not get answered. But first, we have some breaking news. You know, we're live here, Channel 5 Live. So our breaking news is, I guess we got so many people calling in that really wanted feedback forms, but here's the new email address. We're going to send it to clerk, CLERK, at vil.yellowsprings.oh.us. So that's a lot simpler. Just send it to clerk at vil.yellowsprings.oh.us. I want to just take a moment, because I forgot to do this in the beginning, to introduce my co-facilitators. And we have Maureen Lynch, that was asking the questions over here to my left, and we have Lynn Kramer here to my right. And I just want to let you guys know, all 3 of us are from the Village Mediation Program. So I just want to thank them. Did you guys understand the question? Did they read them well? Okay. No mispronunciations out there? Okay. So, coming up, we have our next candidate, Jose, and if I am mispronouncing this, dear sir, I want you to correct me, okay? And the last name is Salmaran. And please welcome Marianne is our timekeeper, so she'll tell us when the last question is.
Okay.
And then you can just finish that question before you have to stop everything. You don't have to stop it right in the middle.
Okay.
Okay? The 5-minute sign. Take this.
Thank you, Jalen. Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Josue Salmeron. So that's pretty close, Jalen. Thank you.
Close.
Thank
I'm
you.
gonna get better.
All right. So thank you. A little bit about me. I love this town. As many of you might have read or know, that I came to Yellow Springs to attend Antioch College, where I studied biomedical sciences. Advisor said, study whatever you want, and I seem to have picked a hard degree to study at Antioch. But anyway, Antioch was great to me. It gave me the foundational skills to be where I am today and to be here, which I'm privileged and honored for you for the invitation to be considered for the village manager role. Much of my work has been in community development, has been working in government entities, specifically the district government under the executive office of the mayor, and I've had several roles: advocacy, grants management, and executive management, leading the strategy for the Office on Latino Affairs to achieve very broad goals to ensure that the Latino community is properly served by the district government, ensuring that they have access to educational, economic, and workforce opportunities in the district. Beyond that, I've done some social service-oriented work, family reunification and workforce development for returning citizens. Most recently, been doing some work around affordable housing and providing opportunities for low-income and moderate-income individuals in the affordable housing sector. So I've checked all the boxes around the qualifications, but I've also gone a little bit beyond that, and to ensure that I'm properly prepared for when these opportunities have arise, such as the one now where I get to blend all my work experience with personal goals of ensuring that communities have access to opportunity, ensuring that we have an infrastructure that supports the growth of communities, so that individuals of all incomes and all family dynamics have the opportunity to grow and thrive in the communities. I think that I was told I have 3 minutes, so I think that's about 3 minutes. So I'll take your questions. Thank you.
What is your sense of the challenges we face?
I've had the opportunity to meet a lot of folks in town and ask questions. I've gotten the sense that there's a lot of concern around utility prices, housing, and community policing. So I'm aware of those issues, that those are pain points for the community, have expertise in them, and I hope to engage residents to understand where we are, what we're doing right, where we need to work, and what's not working.
I have two questions that are related. One is, say something about how you understand the village manager's relationship with village council. And the other one says, how do you understand the relationship between the manager, the police department, and the village council?
Okay, I'm going to take this off. Okay, the first one is, do I understand the relationship between the village manager and the village council?
And the other one
With the staff.
adds the police department.
Okay. Well, as the village manager, we report to the council, and who represents the communities, the voters who voted them in to execute on the vision of the residents. So I know that that's the hierarchy, the work relationship with the council, and I expect to carry out all the duties of that village manager role, which is to ensure that the village has all the resources running properly and that we're executing the operations, whether utilities work, delivering power to the residents, water, ensuring the police department works as it's supposed to. The relationship with the council staff, well, we'll be a team. That's a team that's by its hierarchy design, working together to ensure that the residents are met. The needs of the residents are met in all the aspects of the village council.
You're so brief. It's, how would you describe the values of Yellow Springs?
From my time at Antioch, when I was a student, a volunteer firefighter, it's great to see Colin here. I had the values of the justice. I saw them at the university. I saw them while I experienced Yellow Springs as a village and as a town. So I know that the values of promoting justice, promoting equity, promoting inclusion. So I stand those two. Those are pretty clear from my time as a student. And now as an adult, I see that there's that Yellow Springs tries to build a home for everyone. It has a robust educational system for elementary school children, high school children, and I think that speaks to the values of creating equity for its community, advancing the community needs. So those are values that speak to me personally, and I will be proud and honored to be here and carry those values forward.
Without prior experience in fields such as public works and policing, how would you approach the running of those departments?
I would challenge that notion without prior experience. I've done work in community policing. During my time in the executive office of the mayor, I was involved in a lot of training of police units, primarily Latino liaison units, around creating cultural sensitivity training to understand the dynamics of the Latino community. I've done some work around utilities and my experience with Community Preservation and Development Corporation around our affordable housing developments and being able to provide services to residents in our communities. I've also been engaged with the water agency in the district in several community engagement projects around lead pipe replacement and community engagement.
How do you deal with the news media?
Does that include social media news?
You're answering the question.
Okay, all right. It's a reality. It's a reality. And, we just have to embrace it. We have to connect with the residents' constituency where they are. They're going to be on Twitter. They're going to be on Facebook. Others still like to read the newspaper and get the feel for it. And we have to engage the residents where they are. So I'll embrace it, all of it.
Say you got this job and stayed here 10 years. What would you be proud to have accomplished in that time?
Well, I'll connect that with my understandings of some of the challenges. Today I had some tough questions around housing and what can we do around housing, affordability, creating mixed-use spaces, and making a community that's attractive to various income groups. So I would say that 10 years from today, I'll be proud that we have contributed to growing the community in a way that it's equitable and it's accessible by the folks here in the community and also attracting outside residents.
How and when do you delegate responsibility and authority?
As early as possible and as necessary as possible. I understand that there's a great team in place. They're doing their work efficiently and effective, and I want to ensure that what's working will continue to work. And where there are areas I need to step in and provide more hands-on guidance, I will do that, and as necessary as needed.
State and federal have been drastically reduced. One solution to budget shortcomings has been regional services. What is your view on regional shared services like 911 dispatch, water, etc. for a village?
One, they're necessary. I think that we create value together, and if there's an opportunity to share the burden of delivering of services, then we need to explore those opportunities. And I think there's also an opportunity to increase capacity and efficiency when we're sharing the cost and the burden with others.
What is your viewpoint and opinion on community policing?
This was a question also submitted in writing, and I think that the point of policing is to create an environment where residents feel safe. Now, in terms of what policing activity needs to develop, I think that's done in collaboration with the residents. How do the residents or feel safest, and what policing priorities do we need to create together? Now, police also have a job to do, and they're expected to do that job. If folks are creating an unsafe condition in the community, such as driving crazy or driving with a suspended license and other things, they have a job to do it, and they're expected to enforce the laws and ordinance of the town.
How would you deal with racism in a public safety department?
Up front. I talked a bit about this in the newspaper, that I've done some work around addressing those microaggressions, things that seem small on the surface and insignificant to talk about, but they add up. Together they can create a hostile environment. And so there may be those times or incidents where they may not be seen as blatant racism, but the underlying cause of the criticism or whatever the circumstance may lead to a deeper, greater problem, and they need to be addressed immediately and up front.
I may have to get into some of these. Where do you feel the focus should be in regards to increasing jobs and commerce in the village?
Well, I think we need to have a development strategy. Earlier today, along the housing development questions, we talk about who do we want to build housing for. There's a hourly wage labor market that can't afford to live here, but yet they're working here. How do we create housing that's accessible to them? How do we make housing that's attractive to higher income learners, and creating a space for that? Now, we also need a business ecosystem that can provide economic opportunities for workers in various income classes.
Would you be supportive of a DORA in Yellow Springs? D-O-R-A. I don't know what that is.
I have a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old, and Dora is a character. So if it's a statue you're talking about, I think my kids will love that idea. Anyone in the crowd know? No?
Okay, well, there's another question on this card.
Okay.
What is your opinion of maintaining professional boundaries between village management and employees?
I think they're essential to performance management goals. It's important that we have clear performance expectations in employees, and when we have personal relationships, they can get in the way. However, there's a balance to create. We want employees to feel that they're cared about, that we're investing in them, and they're human beings like each other. And we need to make sure as a workplace that we are creating a space where their personal aspirations are also considered, and we helping them get there.
What are your thoughts about Yellow Springs Parks and Rec operations? Parks and Recreation.
Okay. Kids need safe places to play and learn. I think parks is not just a playground where you just have a good time. I think they're stages for kids to be creative and imaginative, and it's part of the growth. Now it's also part of the environment that it creates for communities, to create safer communities, places that they can disconnect, relax, and enjoy nature.
Would you consider ideas to increase winter business? For example, covered sidewalks, public works, snow shoveling, more complete and prompt clearing of snow?
Okay, the first part of your question is
Would you consider ideas to increase winter business?
Yes, absolutely. Just earlier today we had a great presentation on a hostel project, and part of the business idea said, "Oh, this would be very appropriate during spring through fall, right? Because your main customer here will be bike paths users." And as other businesses in the community struggle during the winter months, we need to, as a village manager, it would be my responsibility to ensure that we create opportunities for customers to engage with the business. And that may be just ensuring the street sweeping and the snow removal that is done in a timely manner, but I would engage the business owners to explore other opportunities to ensure that we have a robust business activities during winter months, and those seasonal activities such as snow and other weather conditions.
It's important that the village manager have skills in communication, management, grant writing, and finance. Please share your assessment of which of those is your strongest point and which is your weakest.
Okay. I mentioned earlier that I got an undergrad in biomedical sciences, so my statistical analysis and the use of Excel are pretty sharp, and and I think that's what got me through business school. I got my MBA from Virginia Tech, so my finance skills are up there. I can do some good financial modeling and all that fancy finance stuff. I've been a grant manager, and before I became a grant manager, I was a grant writer. So I know about grant making and grant writing. Now, if I had to pick what are my strongest skills in that, I would say that the strategic program development has been a strong suit of mine, being able to connect the dots and how to deliver services for marginalized or disenfranchised communities, and then looking for opportunities to create value for the funders and for the target audience, the customers.
What's the biggest professional mistake you've made? How did you rectify it? And how did you learn from it?
Oh, I've had many.
Pick your favorite.
Probably the one that taught me the most life lessons when prior to becoming the deputy director of the district government agency, I threw my hat in for the agency head. I was very ambitious, and I was not politically savvy enough then to manage those waters. And so dealing with the criticism and the aligning or coalescing forces around me when everyone else was doing it, and I didn't have the foresight to anticipate that. That's one of the biggest learning lessons for me, jumping into a politically charged appointment position that I walked in a bit blinded.
How did you rectify it, and what did you learn from it?
I learned from it. One, to be prepared, do your homework, understand what the competitive environment looks like, and know how do you coalesce and build support for your causes. Now, in that case, it would have been for my candidacy, but I think it provides a good framework for when you're tackling challenging issues, that you need to have people on board, understand the power dynamics, know the influencers so that you know what you need to target.
What particular aspects of Yellow Springs would you leverage to enhance the business community?
The entire community, it's a great asset. I think that that should be leveraged, and if the village feels that it's appropriate to sell it in terms of making it a greater destination, I know it's already a destination from the regional community, but there are a lot of things happening in Yellow Springs that it could be a national destination. And how do we leverage our community? That's our assets. That's our environmental features, our people, the creativeness of Yellow Springs, and just the vibrancy of the entire community.
The economy here is dependent on tourism. How would you balance the needs of the community versus those who promote events here or are many visitors? And they're asking about traffic, parking, excessive noise, and law enforcement.
Okay.
So how do you balance the needs of tourism with the effects of tourism?
Right. I was speaking with some about this earlier, how to create that balance. Obviously, we need outside dollars. We need those tourist dollars. But there's also economic sustainability initiatives that we can engage in to ensure that the money that's already here locally circulates the internal community more. We've seen this in other communities where they're procuring their products and services within their community, each other. So how do we identify opportunities where folks who are spending money in town can keep spending it more in town instead of leaving the town? I think that's one way of balancing that inside economic development and those outside dollars. Now, for that outside dollars, we need those outside dollars, and that's a joint effort that we have to tackle. What are the concerns of the community with the consumers or the customers that are coming outside, and what products and services can we develop in our town that would attract the right people that we want in our towns? I think we have a great bike path that cuts right through town. I think that a lot of the cyclists are attracted to the town, not just because it's a midpoint and a path, but because of how unique the town is, and they may share our values.
Okay. Should the village close down the street, bring in some bands, and have a dance on Xenia Avenue after street fair?
Yes, why not? I would have to ask the police chief and also get their input to see what kind of risk that creates for us. But why not?
Please speak about your management experience. Specifically, what is the largest group of employees you've ever managed? How have you handled conflict among staff? And have you developed any particular philosophy or guidelines about managing others?
Okay. I've managed a team of up to 10 individuals in different settings. I think one of the most challenging settings to manage individuals was when I was a health services coordinator for the Hispanic Institute for Blindness Prevention. I coordinated optometry and ophthalmology clinics, mobile clinics out in the field, and I had a team of 10 folks that I would use for different activities, and we'll cover a broad area. I will have to travel a large distance with the team and set up an ophthalmology clinic within 30 minutes to an hour, sometimes serve up to 60 clients, and then have to dismantle, pack everything up, and go. So that was labor intensive and dealing with the stress of everyone having to arrive at the clinic. But that's a direct service coordination. I think in my executive management experience, dealing with managing folks that are high achievers, strong, opinionated, and managing that conflict when they're opposing views on how to get the work done. That's been the most challenging, and I feel I've done that successfully. Was there another part to the question?
How have you handled conflict among staff, and have you developed any particular philosophy or guidelines
Yes.
about managing others?
Yes, I consider myself a motivational and situational leader. I think it's important to motivate and inspire others to deliver their best work. And I'll say the situational leader because you need a different tool for a different job. You can't apply the same practice on everyone and for every environment. So I've had to adapt with those that are task-oriented and they just want to clock in, get their job done, and clock out. And versus others that they feel that they want to be part of a greater mission, that they're creating impact, and so they need to feel that their work is valued and that they're contributing to a greater good.
Okay. What do you see as the most critical problem facing the village of Yellow Springs?
So I touched a bit on this earlier, that the feedback, the limited input I've had, and these are select individuals that I've had the opportunity to engage with, and utility prices, community policing, and housing seem to be critical issues. But I would say that there's an underlying issue at play in these three issues. One is communication, community engagement. I think that all of them, the conflicts that I've heard around this is that there's been a lack of engagement to understand why we are where we are now. So I think that we can achieve some of these critical issues by having open three-way dialogue with our residents. Thank you.
Well, reporting live from downtown Yellow Springs in the Bryan Center, this just in. All of the feedback forms must be turned in by Thursday, April 11th. Oh, breaking news. Our reporter over here to the left.
I'm going to say Friday is fine.
Okay, we're standing on it. This reporter says now, Friday. We're back to Friday at 5 p.m., okay? And also, if you feel so inclined, you can seek out any of our village council members, and you can speak with them personally also. So, the next contestant on The Price is Right, we have Allison Murray. Come on. Round of applause as she makes her way up front here. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here. Thank you for the warm welcome. I want to thank everyone in the Yellow Springs community for the hospitality I have been shown in the past couple days. I knew this was a wonderful community, but I really didn't realize just how powerful and welcoming and peaceful this community was until the last few days. So thank you very much for that. My name is Allison Murray. I'm originally from Findlay, Ohio, born and raised. I attended Bowling Green State University, and then I spent the next 17 years as the training and development coordinator for Honeywell, which was in Fostoria, Ohio. And after 17 years working there, they decided to move their operation to Mexico. And at that time, I went back to school, and I had all kinds of envisions of having a career teaching and education. And then I watched all of my fellow workers who had lost their jobs, and as they struggled to find where they fit in the community, I saw that the town really wasn't reaching out to help them back. So I wanted to be a voice for those citizens, and I started a new career, which I never saw coming, in municipal administration. And so I worked for about 4 years for the city of Fostoria. I was able to be the safety service director there, and I got experience working with police and fire departments and EMS, and that was a huge learning experience. I then moved on to the village of North Baltimore, Ohio, and there I was able to work with a lot of projects, and I had not had a lot of experience working that. And then I found myself at a place I'd never been. I had always been a single mother, and so my son went off to college, and I had always lived my entire life in Northwest Ohio, and I thought, I want to venture outside and do something different than I'd never done before. And so I moved to Columbus, Ohio, and I thought, well, I really like the experience of living in a big city with all of the opportunities. And it's a wonderful city, and it does have lots of opportunities, but what I missed was that small town feel. I missed walking down the street and saying hi and knowing that person, and knowing their concerns, and knowing what they wanted out of their community. So when I saw the opening for the Village of Yellow Springs, I thought, oh my goodness, what an amazing opportunity this would be to serve the citizens of Yellow Springs and help them continue with the warm, welcoming community that they have. So that's why I'm here tonight, and again, I want to thank you all.
Please say something about how you understand the village manager's relationship to village council.
The way I see the village manager's relationship, what I perceive as how I would do it if I were the village manager, is council listens to the citizens are the people in charge in the community. And so they bring their concerns to the village council because they're elected to represent the citizens. And so the people on the council then decide what needs to be done for the community in order to make the citizens happy and fulfill their wishes. And then it would be my job to be the workhorse behind getting that done. So I would roll up my sleeve and find a way to get whatever the council needs to have done to get those issues addressed and get them taken care of.
How and when do you delegate responsibility and authority?
I approach management and leadership with a coaching type style. So I believe that I have the very best people in all of the positions. Much like a coach of a team, you want to have the very best player at each one of your positions. And I believe in the last 2 days, I met the most outstanding group of employees that I have ever seen in the Village of Yellow Springs. You really have an amazing group of employees here. So that part's already covered. You have the very best players at each position. And then it's my job as the leader to coach them, give them the tools they need to be able to do their job, give them the support, the training, the tools, anything else they would need in order to be successful at their jobs. And that's my job to bring that out in them.
Can you articulate how this opportunity supports your highest calling and purpose?
I really believe that I have a call to serve and to serve others, and nothing makes me happier than to accomplish something on behalf of someone else, and to also find a challenge, find a way around that challenge, and successfully complete it. So this opportunity, I believe, because you have a very successful community. It's an amazing village. There are very few small villages in the state of Ohio that have such a thriving downtown. You have a lot of really good things going for the Village of Yellow Springs. So I would really like the opportunity to help you with any challenge that might come along and work with the community in order to get past that challenge.
What is your viewpoint and opinion on community policing?
I believe that the community needs an open dialogue with the police department. I believe that the police department are there to serve the citizens, but they need to know what the expectations of the citizens are. They need to be present out in the community. They need to stop in at the ball games. They need to stop in at the restaurants downtown. They need to be, when they're out cruising, they need to come in, and they need to stop and talk to the citizens. I believe it's very important to have that open dialogue. Much like you guys did community engagement to find the 4 candidates tonight, I would like to see something like a community engagement with the police department, where the chief could sit down with different groups of the community and find out what their concerns are, and so we would have an open dialogue with the police department so that the citizens would have their concerns voiced, and then the police department would have the opportunity to address those.
How would you prioritize the affordable housing goals of the council?
Obviously, affordable housing is a very big concern in most communities, and definitely in Yellow Springs. So obviously, the council would direct me on what their priorities were. They have goals set out for the village of Yellow Springs, and it would be my job to reach for those goals and help them in reaching those goals. So my work would be to address the goals that were lined up by the city council.
Since you have experience in both the private and public sectors, how do you see them coming together in Yellow Springs?
I believe that in Yellow Springs, again, you have a thriving downtown, so that beginning right there, that's an amazing accomplishment, because there are very few small towns left in the state of Ohio that have such energy in their downtown. I believe that the public sector needs to be open and supportive, and they need to have the, I guess, they need to have everything, all their ducks in a row, if you will. They need to have their ducks in a row in order to entice businesses to locate here in the Yellow Springs area. But again, that needs to be a controlled type of growth. We want to make sure we manage growth when we invite businesses into the community. But again, we want to be open to that, and we want to make sure that we have the incentives there that would make us attractive for businesses to locate here.
Have you ever had to discipline, demote, or fire an employee?
Yes, and it's never a fun job, but sometimes it's extremely necessary. I believe in employees, giving them the training and working with them and trying to bring about change in whatever behavior it is that is causing them to go down that path. And if there is no other opportunity for training or improvement of their behavior, then obviously there comes a time when there needs to be termination. But you need to do that in a respectful manner, and you need to be respectful of that person and the opportunities that they would have in the future, so that you don't ruin their entire career. So I think that there is always a time that people, unfortunately, have to be terminated, and I have done that, and it is not a fun job, but sometimes that's what needs to be done, and that's why that would be my position.
What do you see as the values of Yellow Springs?
I think the values that I have read on Yellow Springs are what makes it so warm and welcoming. It's an all, you believe in equality, you believe in welcoming, you believe this is an inclusive community. Those are things that even on the national level, the public doesn't always recognize. And in a small community, to have those values here, that's amazing. And I think you're very committed to helping others. I think you're very committed to providing the best place to live for your citizens, a safe place, but also a place that is open to business and to new people moving in. So I would work very hard to maintain those values for the village of Yellow Springs.
How would you balance the needs of village residents versus visitors? Currently, we have traffic and parking problems, we have speeding that appears to not be addressed by law enforcement, and we have music events that create excessive noise for those who live here.
Well, again, it would be the job of the village council to have legislation that actually worked on that effect. If there were laws that were here in the village of Yellow Springs that were not being addressed, then that was something I would work with the police department on. If there is a need for a new creation of legislation, then that would be something that the council would work together on, and whatever the decision was, it would be my job to make sure that that was enacted and that my department and my staff worked towards that, whatever legislation that they would create to address those issues.
Do you think there is a way to create more parking in and around Yellow Springs that would be unobtrusive?
There's always a way. I found that there's always a way. If there's a problem, if there's an issue, if you have the right team put together and you really work towards that goal, there's always a way. So I am confident that we can find a way that we can create more parking without being a derogatory thing in the village.
Please discuss your experience with e-administration. What are the pluses for local government?
The pluses for local government are always that any monies that come into the village are always planned for and utilized in a good way by the village council. And I think that they put a lot of effort and a lot of thought into planning for any monies that would come in from any local government or any state government pots of money, funds.
How do you deal with the news media?
I like to talk openly and honestly with the news media, but I also don't like to address in public anything negative. I like to keep everything on the positive, and I would invite anybody that had negative comments or concerns to come in and stop in my office, and we can discuss those. I like to keep the positive momentum of the village going forward, and I certainly am not naive enough to believe that there aren't anything negative going on. No matter where you are, anywhere in the world, there's something negative and somebody's upset with something. So I understand that those happen, but I don't like to address those negative things in the media, nor do I like to do that on social media. But I would always invite people to stop in my office where we could have a very candid conversation about the concerns that they would have.
Do you know what you're getting into? Wait, there's more. What it means personally and socially. Seriously.
I think I do know what I'm getting into. This isn't my first go-round. It's not my first go-round in a small town. I understand the nuances of a small town, and I actually prefer that. I have worked in cities, and I have worked in small towns, and I really miss the interaction and relationships, even if it's one of those deals where, like, hey, don't tell anybody, but let me tell you this. I understand that that happens in a small town, and I appreciate that, and I miss it. I miss it now that I'm not in a small town anymore. I miss that. So yes, I understand that there are going to be challenges. Yes, I understand that everybody's going to know about them because there's only 3,700 people here in town. So I understand all of those things. And yeah, I think I'm up for the challenge. So yes, I would say I know what I'm getting into.
Have you been at the bargaining table actively involved in negotiating an agreement?
Yes, I have. When I worked as safety service director for the city of Fostoria, we had 5 unions. We had 3 unions in the police department. We had the command union, the patrol union, and the dispatch union. We also had the city workers union. On 2 different occasions. It's not fun, it's very difficult, but it was something that we got through.
Have you ever had to discipline, demote, or fire an employee?
Yes, I have. I have very, not negative, but not good stories about that. But I have one that I'd like to share with you tonight it turned out to be a very good story. I had a gentleman when I first went to work in Fostoria who was not performing as his role as a supervisor. To training, and nothing changed. It was still the same, and it wasn't getting any better, and it was really starting to hurt the entire department and the entire city. So what happened was we had an individual that worked for him that we thought could rise up and be a leader. And so I talked with the gentleman who was the foreman at the time, and I said, this isn't working out, and I think you know it as well as I do. And he wasn't very happy, and I said, but I'm going to tell you something. I want you to go home tonight, and 2 weeks from now, we're going to know where the opening is in this department. And I'm going to offer you that position as just a worker, because I think that the problem is that you don't really want to lead this department. Maybe you just want to be a worker. And I said, I'm going to give you 2 weeks to decide on that. And so he went home and he was upset, and I'm sure he probably called me a lot of names on his way home. But 2 weeks later, he called me up and he said, I'm going to take you up on your offer. So he went to work as just an employee in the department that he had been the foreman for the previous 12 years. When I left Fostoria 4 years later, and they had a going away party for me, he came up and he shook my hand and he said, thank you. He said, for a long time I really hated you, but I understand now, and I'm actually happy now that I am not in charge of the water department because I have more time to enjoy my farm and my farming. So that doesn't happen every day. I would say that was a once-in-a-lifetime situation. But it shows that sometimes people can be terminated, and it doesn't have to be the end of the world. So yes, I have done. It certainly doesn't always work out that way, but in that instance, it did.
Where do you feel the focus should be in regards to increasing jobs and commerce in the village?
Again, I believe in controlled growth. I believe that this is a small, tight-knit community, and I believe it wants to stay a small, tight-knit community. However, we need to reach out and we need to have some growth in order to survive. So I believe that attracting new business is an important thing, but again, it needs to be planned, and it needs to be structured, and it needs to be controlled. So we need to know exactly who we're inviting into the community, and we need to be very thoughtful when we do that, so it is managed the right way.
The village manager needs strong skills in communication, management, grant writing, and finance. Please share your assessment of your strengths in these areas. Which are you strongest in? Which weaker? And please be specific.
I would say that my public speaking skills are probably my weakest, which you are all evident of tonight. But my grant writing skills may be the best, and I'm only going to share with you why, not because I think that I'm a great grant writer, but because when I worked for the Village of North Baltimore, which was similar in size, it was about 3,600 residents, then they had some major infrastructure issues, some things that they really needed to address. They had a downtown business district that businesses were leaving, and they had a lot of empty open spots because the entire road was broken, the curbs and the sidewalks were broken, and it was very detrimental to inviting any business into that area, and it was really hurting the community. And they couldn't get the money together in order to replace the downtown roadways, the sidewalks, and the curbs. And the other underlying issue was that the water mains that ran underneath that roadway was 150 years old. So it needed to be replaced before we could even think about reconstructing the road, the curbs, and the sidewalks. So I went about working with Ohio Department of Development, CDBG, Ohio Public Works Commission, and we ended up with more than $2.6 million in order to completely revamp the 2 downtown blocks of North Baltimore, Ohio. Not only did we replace the water lines in both those blocks, they're rebuilding, reconstructing the road, which means they had brick underneath years and years of asphalt. So they're going to tear all that up. They're going to finally remove the brick. They're going to put it all back down. They're going to replace the curbs. They're going to redo the sidewalks. And we even got an additional grant from the Ohio Department of Development to get a downtown parking lot that was just a gravel parking lot, and they're going to turn that into a green space with a splash pad that turns into the holder of the Christmas tree in the winter season. So we were very fortunate to be able to get that $2.6 million in order to address those. And we also got a $300,000 Safe Routes to School. We had a long stretch of area that our kids walked to school that there was no sidewalk. They were walking in the streets, and in the wintertime they were walking in the snow. So we reached out, we worked with the state, and we were able to get a $300,000 grant in order to put sidewalks in so our kids could get safely to school.
How would you address the rapidly disappearing affordable housing in the village?
Again, I would work with council in order to address any type of zoning issues that we might have that would assist in creating affordable housing. We would work with the Housing Association. We would work with the different groups here in town in order to address that situation. I think that's something that is happening in communities across the country. I know it's happening in small towns all over Ohio, but I think it is something, again, that is something we can get ahead of. It's a challenge, but it's something that we can address, it's something we can plan for, and it's something that we can overcome.
What are your thoughts about Yellow Springs parks and recreation operations?
I think it's amazing that a town of this size still has a municipal swimming pool. And you guys should give yourselves a round of applause for that, because that does not happen. And it is a beautiful one. I was out there yesterday, and it is amazing. It is amazing how nice that is. That's an impossible thing to have happen, and for you guys to be a village of 3,700 and have an operating municipal swimming pool is a feat in itself. I think parks and recreation are a quality of life issue. Lots of times they're going to cost more money than they're ever going to bring you in, but again, it's that quality of life. I think here in the village, we need those opportunities for our kids. We need to have parks, and the fact that we have this beautiful swimming pool, the fact that we have a pottery, right here in the back, we have a pottery house, that's amazing to me. So I think we're very fortunate, and I would work very hard to continue to find the funding and find the way to keep these wonderful opportunities that we have here in the village.
What is your sense of the most critical challenges we face?
I see that there's probably two big challenges, perhaps three, facing the village of Yellow Springs. I think infrastructure is a big one, and that's one that's not just Yellow Springs, that's all across Ohio. There are a lot of mandates coming out from the state, and there are a lot of things that we need to address that perhaps, just like every other small community in Ohio, have gone a long time that haven't been addressed. So infrastructure and finding the funding to replace that infrastructure and having the plan in place to get that infrastructure replaced, that's very important. And I also think it's very important that we need to open up and have a very frank conversation about the community and policing, because we need to all get on the same page. And I think that the community needs to be very open about what it is they expect. And I think you need to really understand, from our police department's point of view, I think you need to understand their operation. So I think we all need to get on the same page, and we need to work very hard to do that. We need to have an open dialogue with what is expected from the community. And I think that we can do that through a series of and I think that we can get the support of the community back with the police department. I think that that's something that we can definitely do here. Thank you.
Can we give her a round of applause? Thank you, Allison. So there's not any more breaking news. Oh, wait a minute, I mean to ask that as a question. Is there any more breaking news? Okay, we can go right into our final candidate for the evening. You guys have been just wonderful. You know, as many of you know, I have 7 generations, going on 8 generations here in Yellow Springs, but I tell you, thank you, I tell you, I just love the questions. I just love, do you know what you're getting into? I just love the questions. So without further ado, when you're finished with your feedback papers, if you could just put them on my right side, your left side of the stage, and we'll pick them up from there. And of course, those who are watching on Channel 5 or on the YouTube feed, please bring them in. We'll get them. If you cannot get out to get a feedback paper form, we will get one to you. Just please give us a call or email, and we won't go through that again. So, yes. You mean on Channel 5, Patty? Breaking news. Okay, without further ado, I'd like to bring to the front of the room Miss Ilke Doom as our final candidate for this evening. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, first question. Oh, wait, you're going to make a statement. Sorry.
Maybe I will need this. I'll go. Can you all hear me? All right, I'll introduce myself. I'm Elke Doom. I have worked in municipal management for the last 26 years. I've had a wonderful career and worked for several communities. Of those 26 years, I've worked my way up through a number of departments, went back to school as an adult student, and the last 11 years I have been managing communities. So I have made working in municipalities my passion, and it's my focus, and it's something that I so enjoy doing. And I'm often asked, how did you get involved in becoming a city manager? And that's what I am primarily, is for cities. How did you get involved in this? And just like you, I cared about my community. There were some issues going on. I started attending council meetings, started asking questions, paying attention, becoming an activist. And it led me to realize very quickly that those who become involved in their community make a difference. And I was so impressed with what we can do on a local level that I felt that that was going to be my career, and I put my focus there. So that's a little bit about me, and I'll let you go ahead and ask questions from here.
Okay, now it's my turn. What are your ideas to offset the rapidly rising costs of utilities?
I'm sorry, I'm not able to give you an answer to that because I'm not familiar with the utility costs here in Yellow Springs.
Please share your thoughts on dealing with homelessness.
Homelessness is an issue that we all face throughout the entire country. I have it in my own community. We've tried many things, whether it be working with our churches to find shelter, to build shelters. I'm in Alaska, so we are pretty far apart in our communities. It's a totally different environment. So my nearest big neighbor is 6 hours away, and that's the city of Anchorage. And their homeless problem is so severe that there are people sleeping on every corner, and that's in the bitter cold. And so they have been the catalyst for us to learn from as to how we're going to help people. Because there's a lot of people that come in from the interior, from small villages, and think they're going to, somehow make it big in the big city and find that they cannot support themselves and they cannot even afford to sleep somewhere. So I've worked myself with a number of programs that address homelessness. I've not been in a community that has the opportunity or the resources to build a shelter, but I have worked with a number of church groups, and I have also served as a volunteer to serve hot meals to our homeless population and help find rooms for them to sleep in, lodging. And I will say our biggest partners that I've had in my career have been our churches.
What is your sense of the challenges we face?
One of the challenges that I see, or I should say I've learned because I watched a number of council meetings and read the newspapers and back issues and watched other meetings, is the high cost of living here, the high cost of housing compared to other communities, the inability, quickly becoming an inability for some people to be able to live here. I understand from our conversations today that many of the employees would like to live here but don't have the financial resources, and that is a problem. Because when your folks who work for you can't afford to live in your community, then it's time to take another look at how the housing situation is. Can affordable housing be brought in? Can there be some help for the employees so that they can be a part of the community and not have to live elsewhere? So I'm aware of that rising cost. Myself, as a person, I've been watching the local real estate sites, and I see the cost of the homes, and I see how quickly they sell. So there's, a limited supply here also. But I would say that continue to do exactly what you've been doing on the affordable housing end. Look for housing for seniors, look for people with limited incomes. How can we help them to stay in the community and also join the community?
How would you see addressing our many financial needs in Yellow Springs without continuing to increase property taxes?
I would do as I've done for more than one community, is I research. I research what funds are available through the state, through the federal loans, see what type of grants are available, because when the burden becomes on the taxpayer, there's only so much that a person can afford to pay on taxes before they have to leave a community. And that's not what you want here. You want people to be able to stay in their homes. And if it's simply a tax burden on every single project that needs to be done, and I understand that there's quite a few infrastructure projects that need to be addressed in the next few years, there's got to be other resources available. So I would search out and seek every resource that would be available to assist so that the burden doesn't come completely on the taxpayer.
Why did you consider applying for the position?
I took a look at the job description, and what first caught my eye was Yellow Springs. What a charming name. And from there, I thought, well, I want to know a little bit more about this village. And so I did as much research as I could from the very beginning of when it first was started, and the folks that came, and the history of it, and why it was called Yellow Springs. And then I fast forwarded to today's history, what your issues are, understanding more about the community. And once I had done a considerable amount of reading, I realized that this is a community that shares my values, or I should say my values share your values. And this would be a place that I would like to apply and I would like to work.
Please say something about how you understand the village manager's relationship to village council.
The village manager works on behalf of the council and also oversees the community, all of the infrastructure. I mean, as far as with the employees, I see myself as an overseer and also a communicator. And my job is also to be certain that the employees, that the department heads have the support they need to run their departments as well as they can. And also for me to reach out to the community and make sure that everyone understands what we're working on, what we're doing. So communication is very important. So I'm another link of communication from the council to the community to the employees so that we're all on the same page.
How and when do you delegate responsibility and authority?
I recognize that departments have special skills and special training, and so I will work with our departments closely, understand what their needs are, support them, and give them the tools necessary to do their jobs as well as they can, and also look forward to working with everyone so that we are giving the absolute best in a teamwork environment for the community. And always on behalf of the council.
Please discuss a city or village project for which you had to do considerable strategic and operational planning. What was most challenging for you?
A project that I was involved in,
Yes.
I've had quite a few challenges. The one that I found most interesting because we really had to make some tough decisions, and when I say we, it is the council and I together as we talk. I was working in a community that had infrastructure failure, water and sewer, did not have the funds to rebuild and replace or to even expand, and the state had opened up a new grant and said, I'm going to dangle a little carrot in front of you, and what we'll do is we'll allow you to apply for this grant for water and sewer infrastructure upgrades and expansion if you set your rates to within our guidelines on water and sewer. Well, people don't like to change rates, and no one likes rates upped on water and sewer. And so the council and I sat and talked about what the potential to the community would be if we were to be awarded a grant, what the impact would be to our residents to have increased water rates. And our sewer rates were just about right. And it took a lot of strength, and the council went forward and they adopted the new water and sewer rates according to the state of North Carolina. And so we very quickly applied for the grant. We were one of the first communities that got our paperwork in just under the deadline. We just wanted to get to the forefront because the community really couldn't afford to replace their aging water lines. And some of them were just held together with clamps. I mean, it was constant repairs. So the plus side of taking that challenge and also criticism, because people weren't happy. But we were awarded a $3.5 million grant for water and sewer infrastructure. And then we were also awarded a $4 million grant at 0% interest. And that made such a difference to the community. And so before I guess I should backtrack a little bit. Before we got to the point of talking about increasing the rates to meet the guidelines required by the state, we had quite an outreach to our community. We, with newspaper, through our publicized, we had televised council meetings and of course the minutes also. We did as much outreach as we could so people understood that there was a real reason for this. There was a real purpose behind it and what the benefits could be. And so it really minimized some of the concerns that people had, and it really minimized it more once they realized how much money was coming in for us to be able to repair that without raising taxes. And the water rates were just slightly raised. They were nothing terribly high, but still, it's always a concern. But we're really proud of being able to be in the forefront and to obtain that kind of funding to really make a difference in the community and the infrastructure.
How do you feel about developing more renewable energy in Yellow Springs?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that one more time?
How do you feel about developing more renewable energy in Yellow Springs?
Well, I've had the tour, and I've taken a look at the solar power, and I'm aware of the thermal energy, and I've looked at just about everything in the village. I think there's still room for growth, that there's more space, not a lot, but it's definitely a positive thing for the village. It's ecologically wise to do so, and you really should be winning an award at this time for what the efforts you're making in this community to be sustainable in your energy. But I'd like to give you a more detailed response, but I'd almost have to be here and get involved with it to know a little bit more, be able to give you a stronger answer.
How would you deal with racism in a public safety department?
It would be immediately addressed. And I would sit down with the chief, and I would sit down with the entire department, and we would address what the concerns were and how we would go forward and how would we solve that. Because there's absolutely no room for racism or any type of discrimination in any form in any department or community.
What do you see as the values of Yellow Springs?
What I see as the values are people who care, people who are inclusive, people who work very hard at welcoming all people. It's very near and dear to my heart. That's what drew me to apply to this position. To give you a little bit more background, I'm a first-generation American. My family and I came over on a boat when I was a young child. And I lived in a neighborhood where no one spoke English, and I thought that was normal. We didn't know that people spoke English until I went to school, and I had to learn a new language. So having had the opportunity to live in such a diverse community myself growing up, as a young child, it has really made me aware of the contributions that we all have, no matter where we're from in this world. And it's, I'm a very inclusive person. I'm extremely aware of all people. And when I say all people, I'm from the Detroit area primarily. I mean, I'm working in Alaska right now, but I'm in a local southern Michigan person. And we've had many people come in from other countries that have settled. And I've gone out of my way to really reach out to people. And I've offered to teach English as a second language, and I've also taught at the college level. Because it matters to me that all people have equal opportunity to become assimilated, to be part of a community, whether you're from another country or whether you're from another city. So those things are very important to me, and I'm aware that you have the same values.
You've moved quite a bit over the last 10 years. How can we be confident you will come and stay for a while?
It's a good question. Part of the reason that I have moved around is my career development. It's been extremely exciting. and I've enjoyed every moment of it. I've worked with great people and worked on wonderful projects. But when you do move, it becomes tiring. And there's a point that you want to settle, and I'd like to settle here and be with you and be a part of the community and make this my permanent home. So sometimes when you're a city manager or a village manager or a township manager, you have no choice but to move. People come, when new elections come, people have a different direction, and it's very common for us to unfortunately have to move around a little bit sometime. Or there's a point where you've done as much as you can to help your community and you realize you need to offer your services to a community that needs them. And so it does appear that I've moved around quite a bit, but I'm thankful for every moment that I've had with our other communities. But I'm ready to make a community my home, and I hope it's Yellow Springs.
What is your viewpoint and opinion on community policing?
Community policing as in, I'll have to ask you a question, as in the community becoming policemen themselves, policing one another? Or community policing as in our officers are very visible in the community?
The officers.
Very visible. I had a similar question brought to me where my community felt that we did not see the police. They were not active in the community, and so we began having policemen walk the beat, walk downtown, become more visible. And we had a little additional outreach into our community, coffee with a cop, inviting people to come meet our officers. One of the biggest issues that all communities face in this country is that we train officers and then they leave. We put them through school, we bring them on board, and then the sheriff's department may spirit them away, or another department may offer a higher salary. So we've always had difficulty keeping our officers, and so there's always new faces, and new faces often don't get known. And so it's important that the community gets to know who the officers are, gets to know them on a first-name basis. And I understand from what I've read and what I've seen on television that we've got a ways to go.
Have you ever had to discipline, demote, or fire an employee?
Yes, to all three. Disciplinary action I see as an opportunity to help a person redirect their energies in a more positive way to be more productive in their community and in their particular job. But when that doesn't work, and I've put people on oftentimes probation, or I put them on a path of success, I like to call it. If I find after we've gone through all the additional training and meetings and opportunities that we give a person to increase their efforts, then I have had to terminate people, and it's never a fun job. It's never enjoyable, but I do find that if the process is done correctly and there's been plenty of opportunity for improvement, that we can at least handle it rather gracefully and allow that person to move on and find something that's more to their liking.
How do you deal with the news media?
I reach out to the news media very often to share information with them, share updates and stories. They become my partner because I appreciate what they do when they report, and they also appreciate that I'm able to work with them and give them information. And for many years, I would have my local newspaper contact me and ask me about an event or something that was on the agenda or something that happened in the community. And my only question was, when do you need the information by what time, so that you can go to press? And so then I would reach out, I would share the information with them, which then is shared with the community. And it just makes for a more positive interaction, and it also really opens the lines of communication when you're a good partner with your newspapers.
State and federal funds for small towns and villages have been drastically reduced. One solution to budget shortcomings has been regional services. what is your view on regional shared services like 911 dispatch, water, etc., for a village?
Sometimes they work and sometimes they can't work. And so it has to be explored very carefully when we look at regional as to what areas does that region reach. In the state of Michigan, we had a major financial crash in 2008 where the property values were about half of what they were the year before. And with a state that relies heavily on taxes to run your community, there was a major crash, and so we all sat down together with our respective cities and our townships, our communities, and talked about how do we share services, how do we cut our costs. And for some communities it made sense and they joined together in their own consortium. Others, like mine, which was a township, 36 square miles, I could not reach to my neighbor for the shared services that I had hoped for because they were also a large township, because we knew we could not support one another in as quickly a manner as we would have liked in police and fire. But I will say that I had a neighboring community that was really struggling financially and came to me and asked me to take over their 911 services. And so we took a look at, can we do this? Can we do it well? Can we support both communities? And after speaking with both of our 911 departments, our police departments, and having a good long discussion of how we could do this, we did agree to take over the 911 system. I was awarded a grant for the cost to switch over to our community, and then also agreed that when the positions were open that I would make, we had to add one position, but if there were more positions that came with that, that we would reach out to the 911 operators that work for the other community and hire them first. So that was the best we could do for them, and it has worked ever since. It's worked very well, but our efforts on police and fire were just not successful because of the sheer size of our communities.
Have you been at the bargaining table actively involved in negotiating an agreement?
Yes, I have. I have worked with the Teamsters primarily in negotiating a number of contracts. Most of the communities I have worked with and lived in myself do not have unions, but there were a few that certain departments had unions, or the police had their own union, fire had a different one, the employees had a third one. And so I would sit down and discuss what their concerns were and what their requests were, and then we would negotiate a contract.
So say you got this job and stayed here for 10 years. What would you be proud to have accomplished in that time?
10 years? I wish I had a crystal ball I could see 10 years. I mean, not that I don't mind. I've had, and speaking with the employees, I understand that there are some big challenges ahead for the village. And those challenges are the cost of infrastructure, replacement, and improvement. And that's going to be expensive. And if there's a way that we can find a method to improve all of those infrastructure costs, I know they're not pretty. You know, they're not like beautification, which is always lovely when we do that, but the most expensive things are the things we don't see. So if I can be of assistance to help with our infrastructure issues and get those costs covered and then not be a burden to the taxpayer, that would be one of my biggest accomplishments.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Well, as always, that was wonderful. I want you guys to do that applause one more time for yourselves, because that's, yeah. You know, that is democracy at its best, when we all pitch in like this. So, there's a short quiz. Papers, feedback papers are due when? By what time? And if you have any questions or concerns and you'd like to talk to somebody, you can call anybody on the council. Amen. Okay. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. We got that. So, now, if your question was not heard, was not read, please take a moment, go upstairs and have some one-on-one time with our candidates and really get into some courageous conversations. But best of all, there's refreshments. Thank you for coming. Hey, put your papers over here. I bring my own.